Hey everyone, Toby here, and today I'm gonna show you how I'm running Travincal on hardcore. So, before I go into the skill distribution, gear selection, etc., just a couple of sentences about Travincal in general. So, first of all, why do you even run Travincal in the first place? And there's only two reasons. One is the rune drop. It's the second best place to hunt for runes in single player and the number one on Battle.net, just because in single player you do have access to the same map over and over again, so that means lower Kurast is amazing. Unfortunately, lower Kurast can only drop up to Burr, while in Travincal you can drop up to Cham. The second reason is the unique jewelry, facets, rings, amulets, and it's probably also the second best place only because Andy is just so amazing for the jewelry drop. However, Andy can't drop every single piece of jewelry, like for example, she can't drop metal grid for sure, and I do believe the council can. So yeah, all in all, two reasons why you want to run council. One is jewelry, the second one is runes. Now, as you can see, I'm mixing in some Pindleskin runs as well, just because I do believe running council and Pindleskin are very compatible areas with each other. Like, you essentially want the same gear or very similar. Plus, you also need, when you finish your runs, when you finish every single of your Travincal run, you still want to cast your town portal instead of immediately saving and quitting. You want to cast your town portal, telekinesis onto the waypoint, and then select something like Act 4 or Act 1, just because it is faster that way than to run all the way from the start of Act 3 to the waypoint. So since you're doing that anyway, you can just go to Act 5, do Pindleskin, save and quit. So the runtime for Pindleskin will be lower than just running Pindleskin separately. While, you kind of wear magic finding gear anyway, so you might as well do that. Other things worth mentioning about Travincal is that cold damage is probably the only type of damage you really want to have, except for physical, because half of the minions will spawn fire immune, half of them lightning immune, so even if you break their immunities with infinity, you will still be dealing way less damage than usual with your lightning sword or fire sword or Javazon, whatever. Alternative option to Blizzard Sark is something like a Hammerdin, which in softcore is alright, but in hardcore I would seriously not recommend it. I mean, we're talking about 3 super uniques who are guaranteed to spawn. One of them, 100% of the time, will have Cursed. One of them will 100% of the time have Extra Strong. So that means an insane amount of damage, really insane. You can frequently see them with, auras like Fanaticism, Conviction, etc, etc. So staying in melee range versus these guys, it's just not really recommended for hardcore, no matter how good your actual gear is. So that pretty much leaves the Blizzard Sorceress as the only option for making these runs. I guess something like a Berserker Barbarian with really GG gear is an option, but I simply don't have the gear to gear him up. I don't have the Grief, I don't have the Enigma, so I can't say much about it. Okay, so as for the actual gear, I tested like 7 different builds, and I do believe the one I came up with finally is probably the best one. As for stats and skill distribution, they're pretty standard for skills, just everything into cold skills. I think maxing out Cold Mastery is absolutely essential, even if you do have Infinity, just because there's very likely that those uniques will spawn as cold immunity, so once you break that, barely break that with Infinity, you do want to pierce their Cold Mastery for as much as you can. Either way, I just had enough points to max them out since I'm at level 95, and then yeah, 3 skills in lightning, 1 skill in fire, that's it. for my stat distribution, the only unorthodox, I suppose, thing, and this is for hardcore only. For softcore, probably don't even bother with it, but for hardcore, I will always have at least 50% block because, I mean, after extensive testing on that, I'm never going back to zero block builds, like ever in hardcore. So with that said, I tested out several different builds, and they all involved a couple of items. One of them is Storm Shield. I will never use any other shield on a sorceress in hardcore. Storm Shield is the #1 shield by a huge margin. 35% damage reduction is absolutely massive. The defense is massive, and then there's chance to block, increased chance to block. So free mods that I will always use. Another item is Shaco. I will always use this just because damage reduction, huge boost to skills, life, and you, of course, MF, and then you still have a socket. So usually I will use Shale just to reach the 60% faster hit recovery breakpoint. And then, of course, Hodo. Again, an amazing thing, you know, faster cast rate, massive resistances, extra mana, dexterity, all skills. So after playing around with like 7 different builds, I basically came up with this one, and there's a couple of things I'd like to say about it. So first and foremost, the most important item for running Travincal is without a doubt the Dwarf Star, just because of the 15% increased subscription rate to Toby's channel. So the Dwarf Star, Fire Absorb 15%, absolutely massive because Hydras are annoying, and Hydras are the reason both you take a lot of damage, so just kind of ruining your quality of life. You need to keep chugging potions. That's annoying when you're farming. So just put on Dwarf Star, you won't feel a thing. Like 5 Hydras can keep bashing you and you won't feel a thing. There's also, Hydras are also the reason why your Merc is dying, so I'll just quickly go through his gear, and he's using Infinity just for the Conviction Aura, which is pretty massive, just improves your clear speed drastically. Then he's wearing Guardian Angel. I upped it just for the increased maximum resistances, and that pretty much makes him really tanky versus Hydra. And to ensure that, since neither of these items are really giving any resistances, like if you take off Kira's, he's actually not at 75, so I just thought, you know, a pretty decent item over here. It gives really everything my Merc needs. Resistances cannot be frozen, and you know, the defense kind of sucks, but I can at least socket it with something. And faster hit recovery, that's also awesome as well. So, back to my gear. Dwarf Star improves your quality of life drastically. Another thing is actually using Wisp Projector Ring. Why that is? Because first of all, it does provide a decent boost to your Magic Find. Again, since you're Magic Finding, you do want to maximize your Magic Find. But another thing is the Lightning Absorb. And since there's 3 super unique spawning all the time, chances are at least one of them will be lightning enchanted, and that means a lot of lightnings. Plus there's those Zakarum priests who keep casting lightning, so that means you will constantly be taking lightning damage. And put this on, you barely feel a thing, you don't need to check those potions. Plus your alternative is really like Nagel Ring, so that only improves your Magic Find by 10%, and at this point, when you have like over 300 MF, the extra 10% won't do you much, so I'd much rather have some Lightning Absorb and not need to chug potions over and over again than the extra 10% Magic Find. So these 2 are the amazing items that I kind of found that are pretty much the best to use. Now, you might have realized that, but I'm kind of lacking faster cast rate over here, and I actually only have 80% faster cast rate. 40 from Hodo, 20 from Mage Fist, and then I'm using free Telrash's pieces. And this was the most surprising thing that I found out from doing these over 100 Travincal runs is that actually you don't need 105% faster cast rate. One of the reasons for that is because similar to Balus minions, you know, the wave 1 to 5, they always spawn in the same place. So you don't ever get gangbanged if you teleport properly. That's one thing. Another thing is that on your way from Travincal's waypoint to the High Council, there's really nothing that can actually, you know, stun lock you. Because the only mobs that spawn there are first Zealots, who after completing, and this is kind of crucial I believe, after completing the High Council quest, way back when you were still leveling up, at that point all Zealots will never attack you in Travincal. They will always run away from you. That's pretty cool to know. Like, I kind of knew this intuitively, but I just decided to Google it, like what's up with them, and that's how it works. That's pretty cool. And the other two types of monsters that exist in Travincal are Vampire Lords and Zacharan Priests, both of which are mage, well, wizards. I have no idea how to pronounce that word. Mages? Yeah, mages, that's the one. So, since they're mages, they will cast spells, and spells will probably not interrupt your teleporting. So with that said, 105% faster cast rate doesn't really do you much. The Blizzard, if I'm not mistaken on this point, and I might be, so feel free to correct me, the faster cast rate does not reduce Blizzard's cooldown. Basically, cast Blizzard, then you have to wait a specific period of time before you can cast it again. The faster cast rate only affects how fast you cast it, the casting animation, not the cooldown. If that's the case, Blizzard has a massive cooldown and it's your main damage. Faster cast rate doesn't really help you. So if you don't need as much faster cast rate, you can take care of your defensive stats like Dwarf Star, like Wisp Projector, and then just go for full magic finding. And you can probably make a slightly better setup, perhaps something with Skulders, Chanseys. I mean, you can probably think of something. But this one is just really solid all around. It does give you, I do have a Shale rune in Telrash's Blade, so I do get the extra faster hit recovery. Massive boosts to your resistances, magic damage reduced by actually a lot. Like in total at the moment I have 30 magic damage reduced by 30. That's quite a bit. You know, life, mana, again resistances, all of them are pretty awesome. Plus some extra faster cast rate, which I am still lacking. If I didn't have these three pieces, I would only have 60%. And since these are the two rings that I want to wear, yeah, that's pretty much, I need to get 10% somewhere else. Alternatively, you could wear something like Thunder Gods and switch Wisp Projector, but if you wear Thunder Gods, then suddenly Skulders aren't that much better than Telrash's Blade. I think they're even worse. Yeah, last thing is probably boots. I'm running exactly these because they do provide more faster run walk than Ward Travelers, and that's to me important because whenever I'm running from Act 5 waypoint to Pindleskin, that really matters. And fun fact, faster run walk actually doesn't have any breakpoints. Well, except for that it increases your speed every 5%. So you kind of have breakpoints. Like if I do believe you have like a small charm with 3% faster run walk, it actually won't increase your faster run walk at all. But yeah, I'm using these boots for the 30 faster run walk. I also want to have 60 faster hit recovery breakpoint at all times. Regardless of how safe my route is, I'm just not taking risks over here. Plus, the magic find difference is like 25 between these and the Ward Travelers I have. So, yeah, that's actually it for the gear I'm using for running, Travincal. The small charms are pretty much all magic finding, with a couple of exceptions, like this one is like super GG small charm, as well as this one, and then a couple faster hit recovery. The rest are just magic find, magic find, magic find, magic find. Oh, I'm actually using, yeah, so I'm using one more small charm. So I guess if I was to use Scolders, I would have some issues with resistances, and by no means do not go below 75% resistances at all. So that's it for this video. If you do have some suggestions on how to improve this build, please do let me know. I'm still like only 120 runs in. I still have over 800 runs to go until I find the runes I need, until I finish my 1000 runs. So any suggestions are welcome. I will probably try to improve this build, but at the moment it seems really solid and it's just working really wonders. In total, I'm running 402 MF, which for hardcore is usually really hard to reach. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and see you guys in my next video. Cheers!